So almost half the states have laws on the books that restrict abortion, with 13 that have trigger laws. Due to this, there have been many concerns that since the courts may begin to revisit rules of contraception, that sales of emergency contraception jumped 3,000% after the abortion ruling. Now, you would think there shouldn't be anything to worry about with Plan B, but Justice Clarence Thomas also wants to review past rulings on same-sex marriage and contraception. So there may be a possibility that they could overturn contraception. So let's discuss the main one in focus. Emergency contraception is a form of contraception that you can use after unprotected sex or another contraception has failed you and is used to prevent pregnancy. You should use them as soon as possible after you're done having sex. But if you've got more important things to do at the moment, at least use them within 5 days. There are 2 forms of emergency contraceptives: the intrauterine device, or IUD, and the pill, most popular being Plan B. One goes in the vagina and one goes in the mouth. Now, what emergency contraceptives do is either stop sperm or delay the release of an egg to prevent ovulation so that the egg cannot be fertilized. The purpose of Plan B is to prevent the egg and the sperm from meeting. If they already meet, you're out of luck. Or, congratulations, fertilization of the egg has already happened and Plan B will no longer have any effect. It is not the same as an abortion. In the 1920s, Edgar A. Allen and Edward A. Doisy started messing around with animals to learn about how estrogen worked in the pregnancy. They found out they could affect the pregnancy due to estrogen they took out. After years of messing with animals, we finally started messing with humans in the mid-1960s with high doses of estrogen. Women were given 5 milligrams of ethinyl estradiol per day, sometimes with a little something else added for 5 days. And though there were many side effects, it was effective. In 1972, Dr. Albert Usby created a new type of emergency contraception that mixed estrogen and progestin. It involved a small dose of estrogen at 100 micrograms and a progestin called norgestrel at 1 milligram. This had fewer side effects in women than getting hit with that steroid dose of estrogen and became known as the Usby method. The next year, researchers looked at different doses of progestin that would lead to progestin-only morning after pills, which stop or delay ovulation, which is mostly used today, due to effectiveness and, again, less side effects. In September 1998, the FDA approved Prevent emergency contraception kit, which included 4 pills and a urine test. Then in July 1999, approved the first progestin-only pill known as Plan B, which was prescription only. During the 2000s, many would argue for Plan B to be over-the-counter. It had to be taken within 72 hours after unprotected sex, and we all know how easy it is to schedule an appointment with your doctor within the next 3 days. In August of 2006, it was approved for over-the-counter sale for 18 and older, but in June 2013, Plan B was made over-the-counter with no age restrictions. Based off the studies done from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC, the use of emergency contraception has increased over the years since 1998 when the FDA first approved contraception pills. Out of women aged 15 through 44, less than 1% used it in 1995 compared to 4.2% in 2002. However, from 2006 to 2010, it was 11%, with 59% using it once, 24% using it twice, and 17% using it 3 or more times. Based off statistics from 2006 to 2010 of the 11% using emergency contraception from age 15 to 44 years old. Far as age, more women used it from the age 20 to 24 with 23% compared with 16% age 25 to 29 and 14% age 15 to 19. However, older women from age 30 to 44 used it much less with only 5% using it. For single women never married, they used the pill more with 19% compared to partners living together at 14%. And married or divorced partners using it less than 5.7%. By race, white and Hispanic women used it more at both 11%, with 7.9% of black women using it. For education, the higher level, the more usage there was. 12% of women with a bachelor's degree or higher and 11% with some college education used it compared to 7.1% with a high school diploma and 5.5% with less than a high school. Out of the women who used the pill from 2006 to 2010, 45% of them used it due to other contraception failing, such as birth control myths or a condom breaking. More older women at 52% reported using the pill due to this reason compared to 41% of 25 to 29-year-olds and 46% of 20 to 24-year-olds. The least who reported using it for this was the youngest group, 15 to 19-year-olds, at 34%. For race, more white women at 53% used the pill for this reason than Hispanic women at 33% and black women at 27%. And again, the use of the pill from other contraceptive failures increased with education. 58% of women with a bachelor degree or higher used the pill, 51% with some college, 30% with high school degrees, and only 26% with less than a high school degree. The last one is for women aged 15 to 44 from the years 2006 to 2010 that stated 49% used the pill for having unprotected sex. So let's start with education first and guess which group was having the most unprotected sex. If you guessed the less educated had the most, then you were right. 62% of those with less than a high school degree used the pill compared to 53% with a high school degree, 48% with some college, and 43% with a bachelor degree or higher. For age, there was not much of a difference, with half stating they used it for this reason. For race, 60% black and 59% Hispanics used it for this reason compared to 43% of white women. In July 1999, the FDA approved Plan B as the first progestin-only emergency contraception in the United States. 2 years later, in February 2001, the Center for Reproductive Rights filed a citizen petition with the FDA with support from 70 medical and public health organizations to make Plan B over-the-counter. In April 2003, Barr Laboratories, who own Plan B, submits their own application to the FDA to switch Plan B for over-the-counter use. A few months later in December, information from 40 studies was reviewed by multiple committees from the FDA, and all agreed that Plan B was safe to use, with a vote of 23 to 4 from the FDA panel for it to be sold over the counter. And 6 months later, in May 2004, it did not approve the request, saying that there are worries about teen health and behavior. Those studies already prove it not to be a problem. That decision brought out Senators Patty Murray and Hillary Clinton the next month to request an audit into the FDA's decision, and the following month, Barr Laboratories submits a revised application. The FDA was worried about teens? Okay. So Barr moved to seek approval over the counter for women aged 16 and older, in which the FDA says it will decide in January 2005. Now between that time, the FDA added a few oral contraceptives to an already list of pills for safe use that all needed a prescription. But the Center for Reproductive Rights could care less and filed a lawsuit against the FDA for not meeting the decision deadline, ignoring science, and not treating Plan B like other drugs. Now at the same time, Senators Patty Murray and Hillary Clinton placed a hold on the nomination of Lester Crawford for FDA Commissioner. In July 2005, Secretary of Health Michael Leavitt promised the FDA decision by September if Senators Clinton and Murray lift their hold on Lester Crawford's nomination. They did, and the FDA decided to postpone its decision indefinitely for public input in August 2005, even with Crawford stating that there was enough evidence to support safe use of Plan B, also stating that the FDA could not reach a decision on the approval of the application, even though the FDA's own panel had already approved it with a 23 to 4 vote. In September 2005, with support from 70 major medical organizations, available scientific data for safe use, the FDA's own advisory committee voting, and now 11 other senators, Senator Murray and Clinton called for the release of the findings from the investigation of the FDA's rejection of Plan B, and a few months later, after 2 months on the job, Commissioner Lester Crawford resigns. Now in March 2006, a new opponent has arrived, and his name is Andrew von Eschenbach, a friend of George W. Bush, who is to take over as FDA Commissioner. Before that can happen, Senator Clinton and Murray block him until a Plan B decision can be made. The next month, the FDA denies the 2001 citizen petition. However, Commissioner Andrew von Eschenbach invites Barr Labs to resubmit their application as long as they change the age to 18. And the next month, in August, its over-the-counter sale is approved for 18 and older. In December 2008, Teva Pharmaceutical Industries buys Barr Laboratories, and Plan B falls under them. In March 2009, federal court judge Edward Corman orders the FDA to allow Plan B to be sold over-the-counter for 17 and older from Tumano versus Torti. They used the rejection of the citizen petition, with Judge Corman agreeing that the decision was not made for the right reasons. In April 2009, the FDA announces that 17-year-olds can buy Plan B over the counter, but actually just told Teva Pharmaceuticals that with the submission and approval, Plan B can be sold to 17 and older. In later months, Next Choice, a generic version of Plan B, is approved, but not Plan B. Later, the FDA approves Plan B One Step, which is a newer Plan B that is only one pill for over-the-counter use for 17 and older. With minimum drama in 2009, it remained quiet for a while until Teva decided it wanted more problems. In February 2011, they filed for Plan B One Step to be sold over the counter with no age restrictions, with data supporting its safety for all ages. Almost a year later, in December 2011, it was approved. However, Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius, who is a supporter of abortion rights, overrules the decision. She denied it, citing lack of data for safety in younger girls because she felt young girls may not know how to use it correctly. This made it that Plan B One Step would still have to be sold behind the counter for age verification. Later, the FDA denies the citizen petition again, which reopened Tumino v. Hamburg in February 2012. A few days later, Judge Corman issues an order to show cause, pretty much wanted to know why the FDA can't make Plan B available to women, although studies submitted to the FDA have shown younger women to be able to use it and to know how to use it. In March 2012, Teva files an application to have Plan B One Step sold over the counter for 15 and older and put in the family planning section of pharmacies. You know, condoms, lube, and other fun stuff you're so nervous to buy, with proof of age required at checkout, just to make things a little more weird. In July 2012, the FDA approved a generic version of Plan B One Step, Next Choice One Dose, for over-the-counter sale behind the pharmacy use for 17 and older. Then does the same in February 2013 for My Way, another one-tablet generic version. In April 2013, U.S. District Judge Edward R. Corman was back for more and reversed the FDA's decision on the citizen petition and gave them 30 days to allow for over-the-counter sale with no age restriction of levonorgestrel-based emergency contraception. Then roasted them for taking 12 years with the citizen petition. He also roasted Secretary Sebelius, saying that her decision was politically motivated and scientifically unjustified. Now, with a few days left on their court order, the FDA approves Teva's application for Plan B One Step shelf sale for 15 and older, saying it was not because of the court order. The next day, on May 1, 2013, the U.S. Department of Justice asked for a stay of Judge Corman's order so the FDA is not held in contempt of court. But Judge Corman denies the Department of Justice's request as another attempt to delay the decision process. So with a chess move, the Department of Justice files with the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Manhattan, and they extend the ruling to another month. In June 2013, the three-judge appeals court denies the Department of Justice stay order for no age restriction with over-the-counter use for the two-pill emergency contraception. The one-pill order is temporarily banned pending the Department of Justice's appeal, and a few days later, the Department of Justice drops their appeal and Plan B One Step is made available for all ages over the counter, with generic versions being age restricted and behind the counter. And on June 20, 2013, the FDA approves Plan B One Step for over the counter sale for all ages with a 3-year exclusive deal, with other generic pills waiting to submit their application. However, in February 2014, the FDA allows Choice One Dose and My Way to sell their pill over the counter with no age restriction, only if they put 17 and older on the label, so Teva keeps their deal and the other pills can still be sold. Now, with all that happened, in the end, Plan B was able to be sold over the counter from behind the counter with no age restrictions. However, something that was done along this extensive timeline gave way for another problem that they would now have in the present. Now, back in 2006, when Plan B was still owned by Barr Laboratories and continued to go back and forth with the FDA over the approval of over-the-counter sale, and Senator Clinton and Murray were continually blocking every person who wanted to become the FDA commissioner, there was a member of the Scientific Advisory Committee named Dr. Joseph Stanford, who apparently was an S-class advisor because somehow, with not much of any scientific data, he was able to argue that there was a possibility that Plan B could prevent the implantation of a fertilized egg. Now, let me quickly remind you that Plan B doesn't even let sperm get to the egg to fertilize it because it delays the release of the egg. Implantation is when an egg has already been fertilized by sperm and has attached to the uterine lining, which is when you are officially pregnant. That can't happen if the egg is stopped from releasing. But again, this S-Class advisor's persuasion skills far surpass that of any scientist. Either way, Barr Labs decided to change the label to this. With the change, Plan B was finally able to get approved by the FDA in 2006 for 18 and older, which was the first step in its approval. However, it opened the door to anti-abortionist groups to argue against the pill's usage. In 2003, at an FDA meeting, physician Dr. Joseph Stanford wanted everyone to take into account that Plan B may possibly affect a fertilized egg. Now, with most still saying there needed to be evidence to make such a claim, there were few who believed that even if very small, that there was still a possibility. Later on, Dr. Stanford with a few of his colleagues argued that however small the risk, patients should at least be informed of the risk. This came after drug trials showed that even after the egg was released, pregnancy was reduced just like before the egg was released with the pill. This would be great evidence, however, this was done on rats and not studied on humans. Most just felt that this was not enough evidence to risk women's access to Plan B. Another study was from the World Health Organization who did tests on the efficiency of Plan B 3 days after sex, which reduced the pregnancy rate from 80 to 60%. Now, Dr. Helena von Herzen, who led the tests, came to the conclusion that the later you use Plan B after sex, the less likely it is to work. Dr. Stanford switched up the meaning of the results and took it as, if it's still working after a few days, then the egg has been fertilized and the pill is stopping it from attaching to the uterine. FDA chairwoman Linda Giudice was like, no, all that means is what they said. The pill is less effective since ovulation and fertilization can happen later since sperm can survive up to 5 days in the uterus. Some of you maybe didn't know that, so be careful the next time you decide to take a chance and shoot the club up. These observations, or poorly executed studies, should have been seen as just that, but somehow were not. When biologist and physiologist Dr. Horacio Cruxato and his colleagues made multiple experiments to study the implantation rates, they counted the number of eggs ovulated, fertilized, and implanted with levonorgestrel, which is the active ingredient in Plan B. They administered levonorgestrel at different times of the ovarian cycles in rats, monkeys, and humans and found that after sex, it only affected the rate of ovulation. Even with a more solid experiment and data, this was held to the same standard as all other tests and did nothing for deciding how to label Plan B. It's important to know that none of these scientists, doctors, or physicians had any bad intentions. All in the end were looking to have a safe drug that women can use as emergency contraception while also having the correct information available when using it. The problem comes when you have individuals who are not professionals on the topic giving people advice on things they know nowhere near enough about. These are people who have gone to school for years to do this, who have done years of reading, studying, and testing on topics and know the ins and outs of something just to be told they are wrong by someone who doesn't have the same experience in that field. If you're a mechanic, teacher, police officer, retail worker, or produce clerk, and you have gone through classes and trainings for years to educate and update you on your job, it makes no sense for someone who never went through that to tell you you're wrong based off their beliefs. Scientists and health organizations have all done studies on Plan B and understand that it delays ovulation. So U.S. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene saying this:
the Plan B pill kills a baby in the womb once a woman is already pregnant.
Does not help people understand exactly what Plan B does. With the label on Plan B saying this, it is easy for individuals and organizations to make a case to ban Plan B and classify it as an abortion. Another thing I wanted to address was that of who are actually using Plan B. Now, in the charts that I showed previously, as to any charts, it told a story that was easy to figure out with age, race, and status. However, the one with the most concern was of education. From less educated to most educated, out of all three charts, education has a constant flow from least to greatest or greatest to least. The lack of growth in education plays a big part in using Plan B and the reasons for its use. Those with greater education use it more than those with a lesser education. Those with more education also used it more after another form failed, such as birth control or condom breakage, meaning they were practicing safe sex. However, those with less education were using Plan B more for having unprotected sex. That alone, with being less likely to use it on top of having unprotected sex, we see the group of people that are keeping the population growth steady. Now, the big problem is not that people are not going to college, but that a lot of what kids and teens need to know is not being taught to them. Majority of the states in the US have a sex ed curriculum, however it varies by county, school, and demographics on who receives it. Some don't even discuss safe sex, but promotes abstinence, who thought, let's tell teens not to have sex, and they won't. If you don't want your kids learning about sexual education in school, cool, that's your choice. Parents can teach them at home, but let's be honest. How many parents are actively talking to their teens about healthy sex and relationship practices? Not enough. They will learn it from somewhere, and the places will be from friends less experienced than them or the internet, which, let's be honest, in most cases is far worse. Removing something from society does not stop people from doing it. Many times have shown that legalizing and educating people on a topic actually lowers the risk of problems with it. And finally, just to address what Clarence Thomas said about reviewing the past rulings on contraception and same-sex marriage. These rulings were already made, and now we're talking about reviewing them again to most likely be overturned. It just seems like we're starting to take away more rights than giving them in this democracy. Most of these are resolved at the state level, and it should at least stay that way. Having the choice is what makes us different from many places. Many people come here for a lot of the choices that their country does not give them. Taking that away would not only begin to make us what we argue against, but also change us from what we believe ourselves to be. Abortion is a very complicated topic that many people discuss on a daily basis. The topic is so vast that eventually you can get mixed up in your own points during a deep discussion with someone else. However, Plan B is not that complicated. It's a pill that stops the release of an egg before it can be fertilized and become a living being. It helps women in emergency situations as stated above, but most important being sexual assault victims, or another word you may use. Many women are not properly cared for after being a victim of sexual assault, and some that are still have the chance of getting pregnant. 1 in 5 women have been sexually assaulted or had an attempt, and that's in the United States alone. The present abortion rulings put women out of that chance of having the option as a choice after such a traumatic experience. Plan B can help in that case by being available. It's a topic that we shouldn't even have to discuss, but like many, it has to be, and it seems like this review by the court may not be an if, but a when. Now, just like some of these politicians and officials talking about science without evidence, I'm just a regular guy discussing a topic that many more know extensively. If I missed an important part, please leave a comment that is based on facts. I'm always looking to learn more. Stay safe.